On Monday evening, the Globesec cocktail was held with live music and networking opportunities among guests. Here are the highlights from day 2. Switching to the Middle East, Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen reiterated his country's support for Ukraine and the ongoing security situation in the region. With a global magnifying glass on Central and Eastern Europe, the foreign affairs ministers of Poland and Slovakia ended the day with representatives from government and NATO outlining how the alliance has progressed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine and continues to take the necessary steps to defend every inch of territory. There are still more big names and highlights to bring you from Central and Eastern Europe's most important conference. Get active on social media and see you on day 3.
Whilst we await the Prime Minister of Kosovo.
Hello, everyone. Just an update. Very short delay. In another 5 minutes or so, we'll be starting with the next panel. Thank you for your patience. Hello there. Thank you for waiting. I'm Kim Dozier with CNN and the Military Times, and I would like to introduce the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti. Thank you, sir. It's wonderful to have you today. I wish you could share with us any news you had from the meeting you were just in with a very senior official, and I'll leave it at that. I want to set the scene for those in the audience that might not have been following it or those watching virtually. From the outside, watching the events of the past several days, you have ethnic Serbs in North Kosovo rioting because they boycotted elections. They're protesting a Kosovar mayor taking office because he had only 100 votes, but there was only a 3% turnout in a majority Serb area, so no wonder he only had 100 votes. And of course, the Serbs boycotted the elections because Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić and their local party urged them to boycott. In large part because, again, the view from the outside world, Pristina is demanding that they switch to Kosovar license plates for their cars, which is representative for them of the anger over the delay in setting up the semi-autonomous government that was negotiated in 2013. So that's how it looks from the outside world. How does it look from within Kosovo?
We have Serbia as our northern neighbor, which does not recognize our country, which says that we'll never recognize our country, in spite of having an agreement on 27th of February this year, and then on 18th of March in Ohrid, in Ohrid, as implementation annex to that basic treaty, which as its centerpiece has de facto recognition. So we have an agreement with Serbia, we just need to implement it. However, it is my conviction that the President of Serbia said yes to the agreement in order not to sign, and now regrets for saying yes. So the situation is tense because we have a very thorough prepared text turned into a basic treaty between Kosovo and Serbia with de facto recognition as its essence, and also included in the conclusions of European Council meeting on 9th of February this year. Nonetheless, implementation is lacking because Belgrade doesn't want to see it. On the other hand, on 5th of November last year, 4 mayors of our 4 northern municipalities collectively resigned because Belgrade ordered them so, together with over 500 policemen and 10 members of parliament who have reserved seats, all from the same party. Because in Kosovo we have political pluralism, dozens of political parties. But in Serbian community, Belgrade does not allow any other party except the party that they control. So, no political pluralism. I do not believe that there can be democracy without political pluralism, without human rights. And this party is kicking everyone else out from the race and in the end boycotting elections. We postpone elections for 4 months, from December to April. In April, we have to have them. On 23rd of April, 4 Albanian candidates won. 2 from my party and 2 from one opposition party in our parliament. They are mayors with small m, not with big M, because turnout was low. Therefore, I cannot consider that they have full political legitimacy. However, legality and constitutionality must be in place. They are the mayors. International community recognized the process, recognized the results, but when these mayors were supposed to go in office, in municipal buildings which are property of our republic and happen to be empty because Serbian party left, they started to organize violent mobs and attacked both our policemen and NATO soldiers.
Yet there were also provocative acts done, like Serbian symbols were taken down when your mayors with the small m took over and your police went in. With the situation as it is right now, which is very tense, what could you do to ratchet down the tensions? For instance, NATO's forces there, KFOR, they're bringing in 700 extra troops. Could you pull out Kosovar police, which in some cases are seen by the northern Serbian population as provocative?
In every municipal building in Kosovo, we have 38 municipalities altogether. There are from few to a dozen of policemen. That is a normal situation. And I look forward to have that in Kosovo, in these 4 northern municipalities as well. But as long as there is this violent mob outside threatening to attack, who does graffiti with letter Z, showing admiration for despotic President Putin and for Russian military aggression and invasion in Ukraine, and also some of them being policemen in Serbia or in Gendarmeria there, We must have our special units in the municipal buildings. Our police is doing a highly professional job. They are trained by Democratic West, both EU and US. They are Western-oriented. They know very well human rights, and there are no violations from the side of our policemen. In these municipalities, I have given instructions so deputy mayors be Serbs, and the local governance should be multi-party, multilingual, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, because diversity should be reflected.
And how are those deputy mayors chosen?
Mayor chooses deputy mayors.
Okay.
So Albanian mayor is choosing a Serbian deputy mayor, and it's working. I have a minister in my government, Nenad Rashic, who has his own party, and his deputy, for example, deputy minister is from Leposavić, from the most northern municipality. So there are Serbs with whom we cooperate, but situation is not free and fair because of the pressure, blackmail, and threats that they get from official Belgrade, engaged in this project of Serbian world, all Serbs in one country, and this is what is reflected in our country with the attempts for destabilization. But let me ask a question which actually is not rhetorical. If these mayors will not be in the municipal building, where should they be? Who should be in these municipal buildings? It should be these mayors. Of course, their mandate is not 4 years, it's only 2 years. But even this doesn't have to last. I was discussing now with VP High Representative Borrell and his special envoy Lajčák, saying that basically if there would have been a peaceful protest for early elections, it would have my understanding. But not mobs with letter Z who shoot at soldiers and policemen, throw grenades, and shout "Ubi, ubi," which in Serbian means kill, kill. To this fascist mob, we do not surrender our democratic republic. If they want peaceful protest with early elections requests, they have a prime minister who has been all his life a political activist and is more than ready to listen to them and perhaps also to agree with them.
Is there any dialogue with that opposition?
Brussels is the venue where we do dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia, because I do not like bilateral relations, good neighborly relations, without European values. We aspire to join EU. We have applied December last year for accession formally. Also, we want to join Council of Europe. Kosovo is a success story. We had 7% of GDP as economic growth in these 2 years that I'm in the government. Tax revenues increased, for example, by 2/3. FDI doubled. And we are becoming export-oriented country. In Western Balkans, six countries, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, Kosovo, Albania, North Macedonia, and Serbia, we are number 1 according to Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, fighting corruption, World Justice Project, rule of law, Transparency International, political freedom, liberties, and civil rights, VDEM, electoral democracy, and we are coupling democratic and economic progress. So the future of Kosovo is bright, but we have, with the force of rule of law, combat extremist, ultranationalist, right-wing groups.
But you have just portrayed a situation where Kosovo is, from your description, taking the high road. You have been recognized by the United States, recognized by the EU, recognized by everyone in the G7 as an independent state. As you said, Serbia won't recognize you. But what steps can you take to act on the 2013 agreement, the Brussels agreement, to give those ethnic Serbs in the north a feeling of autonomy? And if you always have to go through Brussels to talk to your own minority, I mean, where is this sort of independent communication? At some point, if you want to become part of Europe officially, you've got to be able to open that dialogue and deconflict this unrest in your own country.
I have to say that it's difficult to imagine from outside the lack of freedom of expression for Serbs almost everywhere they live in the Balkans. Because the viewpoint that has been installed is one state, one party, one leader, one church. The main political party is Serbian Orthodox Church. And they have the logistics, the infrastructure of bishops everywhere in every municipality and perhaps neighborhood. So we need democracy to be reinstalled.
So you're saying that every single Serb within your territory has taken an absolutist position, they don't want to be part of Kosovo and that's it?
No, they are being bullied by Belgrade. They want to be part of Kosovo, but they cannot express freely what they want. We have a Serbian community in Kosovo which is 4% of population, but we have 3% of other minorities and 93% are Albanian. Roma, Ashkali, Egyptian, Gorani, Turks and Bosniaks. But the Serbs in Kosovo, Belgrade allows only one party. For example, Bosniaks have several parties. Turks as well. We Albanians, we have dozens of political parties. Serbs have only one political party. It's not allowed. The guy who dared and made a political party, my minister Nenad Rašić, his son was severely beaten a couple of years ago. He's a very courageous man. I don't agree with him all of the time, but you know, why we should agree all of the time? You know, all of the time one doesn't agree with oneself, let alone with others. So I think it is important to be able to have diversity, heterogeneity, political pluralism. Regarding Association of Serb Majority Municipalities, 10 years ago, this has been signed in Brussels. In contrast to signing that document, President of Serbia doesn't want to sign with me this basic treaty that we have adopted and endorsed together. However, this document has some very strange formulations. Like, for example, in certain municipalities, police commander should be a Serb.
But if it's a Serb municipality and they want to be policed by Serbs, isn't that a way to reduce the tension?
You know, of course, it's very likely that in a Serb majority municipality, the police commander will be a Serb. But it's very problematic if you write it down with law-abiding validity. Because what if a Roma wants to become a police commander? Do you by default exclude? Then it takes the flavor of racism. So it is very important to acknowledge that most likely it will be from the majority of community in that municipality, but not to make it mandatory.
But it sounds like
national identity is a belonging to certain culture and language and historical consciousness. It is not a profession. Policeman is a profession. A good policeman is not only an Albanian policeman or a Serbian policeman. A good policeman is a good policeman, full stop.
I hear you, but the argument could be made that you're letting that, you know, detail be the enemy of the overall good, if that's what it takes.
Is the principle of the structure, you know, so that's what is at stake.
We have about 15 minutes left, so I'd like to invite questions from the audience, and if our mic runners could bring one down there. While that's happening, I'm going to take the first one from Slido, which asks, who takes care of the Albanians in Serbia? Do they also have an association, or will one be formed? Ethnic Albanians or Kosovars in Serbia?
Albanians in Serbia have National Albanian Council with very little competences. And they inhabit 3 municipalities, Preševa, Medveđa, and Bujanovac, where unfortunately Serbia is exercising a kind of bureaucratic, administrative, ethnic cleansing by passivization of addresses. Policeman comes at your door. If they see that you're not there a couple of times, then they remove you from the register. So this is done in the name of not registering as inhabitants of the diaspora, but actually they do it to all the people. When I said to President Vučić, let's have good neighborly relations with reciprocity in the rights of the minorities, he didn't want even to listen, let alone to answer.
And sadly, we don't have President Vučić here as we'd hoped. Can you introduce yourself and ask a question?
Thank you very much, Kimberly. My name is Edward Joseph from Johns Hopkins SAIS in the United States. Great to see you again, Prime Minister Kurti. And you make a very strong case. You make a strong case for the justification for what you did. You make a strong case about the record here in Belgrade that has led to this situation. Of course, these disgraceful attacks on KFOR and on your own police. I want to ask you, at the same time, do you recognize KFOR's role, the role of the international community, and in particular NATO, KFOR for overall security in your country, and therefore the obligation on your part, on your government's part, to coordinate and agree with your international partners, above all with NATO, on such a move? And do you recognize the consequences for this in Belgrade when President Vučić, this anti-democratic leader, is under unprecedented pressure from his own people? Please.
Well, as you know, we have NATO in Kosovo since NATO intervention, which stopped Serbian genocide. And we consider NATO indispensable for our security and defense. We are in regular communication with NATO, for example, with General Restuccia, General Commander of KFOR, Italian experienced army officer. I'm in regular contact, and sometimes we meet very late at night because the situation is very demanding. So there is coordination, there is communication, but not every time we agree on everything. For example, regarding these municipal buildings, they belong to the Republic. I can understand that there shouldn't be much policemen inside. But beforehand, there shouldn't be violent mob outside. And you have seen all these violent people hitting and shooting at our police, journalists, and KFOR.
Yeah, 30 KFOR soldiers have been injured.
Yeah, for those 30 KFOR soldiers injured, there are dozens responsible, but they are not in prison. These people who do these things should go to prison. That's why, you know, it's not justice only to do something on the ground, but to have the entire chain of judiciary, prosecutor, and so these kind of crimes do not get repeated. I fully agree and understand that we need communication and coordination, and we are doing it. However, regarding these municipalities, I cannot sit in my office as Prime Minister and tell to these mayors in the north, you should not stay at your office. I recognize they might stay much shorter than their mandate is. They are technical, administrative. We have ordered all people who run into these elections, please no triumphalism. This is not a success. This is an unfortunate situation. But my Minister of Finance has to cooperate with mayors because none of the municipalities of Kosovo is self-sustainable. Their revenues, their incomes are slim. They need central government. The mayors in the north resigned to make system dysfunctional. I need minimum functionality with this kind of legality of democratic process, even though with low turnout and weak legitimacy.
Prime Minister, I'm hearing you describe, you know, from your perspective, you're correct in the eyes of the law and with what you're doing. But often in situations when you're trying to deconflict, could you do something like have the NATO forces on the outside and your police on the inside, so there's less friction? Are you looking at something like that? Could you have the mayors operate elsewhere, even though that is not the situation that you hoped for? I mean, I hear you say you're in the right on multiple different fronts, but you are also in a position of strength. And it falls to those in a position of strength to make the concessions. I mean, is there a possibility, a chance to drive a wedge between Belgrade and the Serbians in your country to make them feel empowered?
My position of strength comes from my position. And that is Prime Minister's office, that is Democratic Republic of Kosovo. So what I'm doing is my duty. There are parallel structures in the northern part of our country. If I would now order mayors to leave that office into another office, somewhere elsewhere, it would be as if I am engaging in creating sort of a parallel structure to parallel structures, copying their method. I would join their illegality. I cannot do that. You know, one of the good, solid definitions of democracy is that law should be above politics. So law should be above politics. What we can do within law and still doing politics is at some point early elections. This is what we can do. But we cannot say that these mayors are not mayors. International community, with a general consensus, accepted the process of elections and its results. They accepted these mayors giving their oath. How come that you now dispute these mayors when they want to enter certain building, which happens to be public official one? If international community would have told me, don't do elections because there are no circumstances, we should engage in negotiations or talks, or you had the process of elections, but this result is not okay, or you have the result but don't give the oath, then we would be talking politics. Now, politically, I'm doing what I'm doing, not out of strength, but out of lack of strength. I have no power to do other things now. So otherwise it's not possible for me. So I had strength beforehand, not now. Now I'm doing in this extremely well-established legal course of action. I cannot move outside.
I hear you.
Basically, now that people that consider that I have a lot of power, I used to have much more a few months ago.
I understand. One more question from the audience. And if you could introduce yourself.
It's working out? Yeah, perfect. Rika Josvia, Radio Free Europe. Mr. Prime Minister, are you not fearing international isolation, though? We saw yesterday that the US will impose sanctions on you. That's your biggest friend and has been for a long time. And are you worried that the EU will suspend visa liberalization that your citizens are supposed to get on January 1st, 2024?
Thank you for the question. You first asked, are you afraid? And then, are you worried? Let me say that I'm worried almost all of the time, but never afraid. Because
but
it goes
US
again with my job. It's my job description not to be afraid and to be worried.
But the US is sending a powerful message. They want you to find a way out of this.
We're working hard to find a way out of this. And I believe that the way out of this should not be a curved road, but rather a railway, which means we need two tracks. First track is to get out from this crisis in the north, which means rule of law, the mob either back to Serbia or in prison in Kosovo, and then decreasing policemen in municipal buildings and normalizing the situation. Second track is swift, full, unconditional, without delays, implementation of the basic treaty that we have agreed. Legitimacy authority, credibility of all three sides, 3+1, Kosovo, Serbia, EU, and US, is eroding by having a text and not having an implementation. One of my greatest critique against my predecessors who were doing these kind of agreements was that signing the agreement and implementing it were two different planets. I was hoping that we are bringing this to the same continent, to Europe. But now we are relapsing into the old syndrome, where we get agreements which don't get implemented. But here I've made a long list how Belgrade was violating implementation of the agreement. I did not do that. And secondly, to this railway track, we need a faster train. We need intensified dialogue, not to have high-level meetings once in 2 months.
So do you think you'll be meeting soon? Are you willing to meet soon with President Vučić if the US or EU could pull that off?
I am very much ready because I like the agreement, the de facto recognition, also including self-management of Serbian community that I will respect because I want to defend all the Serbs. I'm their prime minister as well. And I've been suffering a lot in my life. I don't want others to suffer. I know what it means to feel unrepresented, to feel without voice. So I want to engage with Serbian community for their rights. They should be the end beneficiary. With the footnote, I cannot compensate President Vučić for the loss that Serbia as a state had due to the crimes of regime of Milosevic. I cannot compensate Serbia as a state, but I am there to make sure that Serbs will enjoy all the rights. Self-management of Serbian community, framework convention on the protection of minority rights, national minorities, is something that I adhere fully, and I want to engage when we implement the basic treaty.
My last question. We both lived through 1998 to 99. I was there as a reporter. You were living through it in your early 20s. I won't give my age. Some 6,000 to 10,000 Kosovars were estimated killed through what the UN and the US have called Serbian ethnic cleansing. And after that, the International Criminal Tribunal reported that several hundred Serbs were killed in revenge attacks. Is there still that hatred on both sides, that sense of a lack of justice? Are we at a dangerous moment where something like that kind of violence, could happen again?
On 2nd of May, together with President Vučić, VP High Representative Borrell and his envoy Lajčák, we have adopted and endorsed a declaration on missing persons forcibly disappeared. And I think that that is a very good start for addressing the past, reaching justice and reconciliation. I'm hopeful. But again, we have an agreement which needs implementation. There are two key points, I believe. Number one is to use technology to discover new mass graves, LIDAR technology, light detection and ranging, or satellite footages as well, because in geological layers of Earth, we can find where there are rather empty spaces which could indicate mass graves, and we should open the archives.
So you're saying that the wounds remain unhealed?
The wounds are still open. People are in deep sorrow, especially during the season of spring, because then it was when the majority of massacres took place. However, when it comes to missing persons, we have 1,617 missing persons. When it comes to missing persons, then anxiety and anger are even greater than mourning and sorrow. So that's why we gave it urgency in our dialogue in Brussels, and I hope that we are going to treat it with an utter priority also in implementation.
Thank you. And with that, I want to tell the audience that refreshments are now available in the hotel. Sessions are continuing on the Maria Teresia stage. Here at the Danube, we are back at 13:45 with President Macron. And you heard it here first. Thank you, Prime Minister, for letting us know you are ready to meet President Vučić at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.